Hi there, welcome to another King's Daily and welcome to the first King's Daily of 2021. It's a new year and if you're new to following these dailies through, we are just over the course of this unusual season we find ourselves in with COVID and all the restrictions. We're just trying to bring a small encouragement, working our way through different books of the Bible, currently John's Gospel, and I'm going to be reading from chapter 13 verse 21 to 30. And just give a bit of context for this passage. Jesus just washed the disciples' feet, giving them an example of the way that they are to love and serve one another, in the way that he lays his life down, takes the lowest place in the room, ultimately pointing towards the way that he would lay his life down for us on the cross. So I'm going to read chapter 13 verses 21 to 30. It says this: After Jesus had said this, he was troubled in spirit. And he said, "Very truly I tell you, one of you is going to betray me." His disciples stared at one another, at a loss to know which of them he meant. One of them, the disciple whom Jesus loved, was reclining next to him. Simon Peter motioned to this disciple and said, "Ask him which one he means." Leaning back against Jesus, he asked him, "Lord, who is it?" Jesus answered, "It is the one to whom I'll give this piece of bread, when I've dipped it in the dish." Then, dipping the piece of bread, he gave it to Judas, the son of Simon Iscariot. As soon as Judas took the bread, Satan entered into him. So Jesus told him, "What you're about to do, do quickly." But no one at the meal understood why Jesus said this to him. Since Judas had charge of the money, some thought Jesus was telling him to buy what was needed for the festival or give something to the poor. And as soon as Judas had taken the bread, he went out, and it was night. In the previous verses, in verse 18 of chapter 13, Jesus has just quoted Psalm 41 verse 9 that says this: "Even my close friend in whom I trusted, who ate my bread, has lifted up his heel against me." At the heart of betrayal is relationship. To betray, someone once said, you must first belong. And Jesus had chosen Judas as one of the 12. You can read that in John's Gospel 6 verse 70. He'd shared his life with these 3 years, walking with Judas as part of the 12. Jesus had trusted Judas to take care of their resources. We just read there that he took care of the money. He was the treasurer. Jesus had invested time in Judas, teaching him alongside the others. And Jesus just served Judas in the way that he washed Judas's feet along with the 12 as well. And that psalm that Jesus quotes, "Even my close friend in whom I trusted, who ate my bread, has lifted their heel against me." This is, I think, the imagery of a horse that might maybe kick back its heel against the master that maybe has just fed and cared for the horse. And the heel that Jesus just washed in the washing of the feet there, this heel is kicked back against him now and is hurting him and causing him pain. And I don't know if you can relate to this. Maybe you've experienced moments of betrayal in your own life. Personally, I can think of a couple of instances where I've trusted people or shared things with people or served people or whatever, and there's been a betrayal. There's been that hurt and pain as there's a kickback in that relationship. And how do we walk through those times? How do we navigate them well without becoming hurt or bitter or reacting back in anger and hitting out or lashing out or whatever? How do we do that, and how do we help one another do that? Well, wonderfully here we have an example from Jesus, how you walk through these things, or maybe help others walk through them as well. And the first thing we read here is that Jesus' response is not one of kind of unemotional, detached indifference. Verse 21 says, when Jesus had said this, he became troubled in spirit. This is like a sense of visible emotional turmoil over what is going on. And it said that then he said, "Truly I say to you, one of you will betray me." I don't want to stretch this too far really, but just to say, I think there's this, we don't hide the pain, we don't hide the hurt, and we find places to talk about it. Jesus spoke about it, he felt it, these things cause us pain, and we need to find those around us who, with the love and the wisdom and the grace to speak to about these things, about how we might walk through them. The second thing I think to see here is that Jesus reaches out in love. Some commentators, scholars see in this, in the offer of the bread to Judas, one said it's a sign of communion, a last appeal to the conscience of Judas. And others said it may also represent a last effort to restore relationship. And maybe in this there is a reaching out in love to Judas in these final moments. I mean, Jesus had taught to love your enemies, love those who hurt you, love those who maybe betray you, and reach out in love to them. And the only way we love like that is when we experience and know the love of God for us. John, later on in one of his letters, it says, you know, we only love because God first loved us. And it's as that love is poured into our hearts, he enables us to love those who maybe even hurt us and betray us. And I just want to say there's a note here of caution, because obviously there are some situations that it's not wise for someone to reach out to their betrayer necessarily and contact them and try and talk and so on and so forth. There might be safeguarding things around that, and that's why it's important to talk with people about how to handle these things. But Jesus here seems to reach out in love to Judas in this last moment. But the third thing I read here is that Jesus lets him go. There comes a point where you've done all you can do in a relationship. The Bible tells us to live at peace with all people as far as it is possible with you. And sometimes a person walks away, and Jesus here lets Judas go. It kind of reminds me of the story of the prodigal son, or the two sons in that story, but the one that leaves the father. And there's a lovely quote from The Cross and the Prodigal. This is an excellent book by Kenneth Bailey, and he says this: "The relationship is broken because of the son's act, but the father still holds out his broken end of the rope of relationship, hoping the other end can be joined. In doing so, the father suffers. If the father had disowned the son, there would be no possibility of reconciliation. It's the father's suffering that provides the foundation of the possibility of the son's return." That's the beauty of the gospel. Jesus lets him go. The rope is broken on Judas's end, but Jesus reaches out in love, but at this point lets him go. And we need to do that. We need to, those situations that I've faced personally, and to get to that point of not standing in judge over those people, not when you're hurt, the temptation is to hurt back, but actually it's to walk in the way that Jesus walked, to forgive those who sin against us. That's how Jesus taught us to pray. Forgive us our sins, but help us to forgive those who fail us. And God gives us the ability to do that, and the grace to do that, and the strength to do that as well. But Jesus lets him go. And the fourth thing here we see is Jesus trusts the Father's ways, even when it's painful, even when through this betrayal it will end on the cross. Romans 8 says God works all things for the good of those who love him and have been called according to his purpose. God works all things in and through, even these difficult things, even these painful moments, even in moments of betrayal. God works good, and here it culminates in the cross for the ultimate good of the world. And so Jesus' response isn't one of unemotional, detached indifference. Jesus reaches out in love. Jesus lets him go, and Jesus trusts the Father's ways. And so when we face these things ourselves, when we face betrayal ourselves, when we go through it or we're helping others through it, remember that we come to the one who will never betray us, who will always remain faithful to us, who forgives us where we've failed and where we've betrayed, who enables us to forgive those who betray us, and helps us grow as faithful friends to others as well. And I pray for the grace to walk in those ways today. Hope it's been helpful. Take care. Bye.